Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to Australia once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel quite a few times before. Now, I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last couple of years, a few different styles, but if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they're probably best known for their different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs, but mostly for their fruity, juicy sours. They're definitely one of the best breweries in the world in that particular category at the moment, in my humble opinion. But the beer that we're going to have a look at from them today is a style that I've had from this brewery quite a few times before. It's one that I know they can do very, very well. It's one of their latest releases here in Hong Kong, but it is a little bit different compared to the other ones I've had from them in this style category in previous reviews. So that really has piqued my interest. So needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review. And as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head down to Australia, like I said. We're going to go to the state of New South Wales, the city of Sydney, and the district of Botany, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Drop Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Blood Moon. It comes in at 6.9% ABV. They're describing this one as a triple fruited sour, and the fruits in this one are blood orange, blood plum, and blood cherry. And if memory serves me correctly, I think that's the first time I've had any of those three fruits in a one drop beer. So yeah, that was one of the main reasons this one piqued my interest. The name was the other one because it reminded me of the Blood Moon that I had from the wonderful Holy Goat Brewing from back home in Scotland. Those guys are from Dundee. Great brewery if you haven't tried them. But yeah, if I remember correctly, I bought this one at Craftissimo over in Sheung Wan on Hong Kong Island, somewhere that I would really recommend you visit if you come here to Hong Kong. They always have a good selection of different sour beers, and they get one drop whenever they appear in Hong Kong too. So yeah, I'm really curious about this one. It's always nice to try different fruits in sour beers from breweries that you know quite well. But like I say, one of the best sour beer breweries in the world at the moment, in my opinion, so you really should try some of their stuff should you get the chance. But let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Drop Brewing Company before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated. And remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Australian playlist along with a number of other things. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, but quite regularly because we do get a good selection of Aussie things here in Hong Kong. And do make sure that you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days. And do make sure you check out my friend Sam Smalley on YouTube as well, who is a regular Australian beer reviewer these days, and he's doing some very nice videos as well. I'll put the link to his channel in the video description for you below too. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Drop Brewing then. So Drop Brewing, as I mentioned earlier on, are based in the Botany district of Sydney, very close to the airport, and they were founded back in mid-2016, but they opened their doors a few years later in 2019, and the four people behind the company are Clay Grant, Meg Barbitz, Nick Caldescoles, and Liam Quinn. So Clay has a background in food catering, and he shared the idea with Meg, his wife, that he wanted to start a brewery, and she was very supportive of this because she had worked in tech, with a lot of tech startups, so she knew the business side of things very well, and she liked the idea of them having their own startup company together. Nick is originally from New Zealand, and he was the original head brewer at Garden Brewery in Zagreb in Croatia, which is actually where he met Meg and Clay, who were on holiday visiting Meg's family at the time. Liam is Nick's best friend, and he was in the army, but also had a lot of experience in the hospitality sector as well. So they've got a very kind of strong team there, and they combined all their skills, and they've made a pretty damn good success of it. But Clay and Meg officially founded the company in mid-2016 when they designed the brand and the logos and stuff like this, and also started planning the company. And they actually sold their house to fund this new startup, but decided to use a little bit of the money as well to go and visit Croatia, and that was where they met Nick, of course, and he would join the venture in 2018. So the idea behind the name One Drop is that a single idea or action can change the course of everything, and that is, of course, what they say started this for them. The idea that Meg and Clay had to kind of start the brewery was really something that changed their life. So yeah, one drop, one idea is what changed it for them. But the brewery itself is located in an old paper mill, and they sourced their original brewing equipment from the Canadian company DME, who I think are now defunct if I'm not mistaken. But this included a 12 hectolitre brew kit and 6 24 hectolitre fermentation vessels, and they also have a canning line in there from East Coast Canning as well. But over the years, they have, of course, scaled this up. They've bought new fermentation tanks and expanded their capacity and things. And as of February 2025, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 480 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. And like I said, they've really made a name for themselves when it comes to the fruity, juicy, smoothie, sour type beers, and also the New England hazy IPAs. So yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about One Drop Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a wee bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on then and have a wee look at the beer itself. So this one is 440, is it 473 milliliters, this one 440 milliliter can, but yeah, you can see the artwork on this is kind of in the same style, if you like, to what we've seen from One Drop Brewing Company before. Try and not drop it, but there you can see at the top of the can there is the One Drop symbol. It's got a plain gold top on the can there, and it also tells you a little bit about the beer on the back there. But I really do like the One Drop artwork actually. But it says here, Blood Moon is a brand new fruited sour out of our R&D program and heavily inspired by the humble and OG Florida Weisse. Ooh, it's kind of interesting. A softly sour and moderately fruity beer out of Miami in the US. In true OD fashion though, we've amplified the fruit tube with a solid souring using our in-house lacto culture, and then piled in purees and concentrates of blood orange, blood plum and blood cherry. Wowee, what a combination for a good time. Fruity, tasty and oh so vibrant. Howl to this one and see where it takes you. So it says we should roll this one. So we'll do that, we'll roll it along a little bit, and we should flip it upside down and let it do that. So yeah, so we should let it go like this a wee bit before we open it. So yeah, I think hopefully that should do enough. I could always pause the video and do it for a wee bit longer actually, but I think we should hopefully be okay to open this one up. But yeah, the Blood Moon, blood orange, blood plum and blood cherry in this one, kind of based on a Florida Weisse, which is, I'm trying to remember the name of the famous brewery over there that used to do that in Miami. But yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass and see what it's all about. These ones can always be very, very nice. But yeah, watch the pour on this. These One Drop beers are always a little bit special when it comes to that. It is literally just like pouring fruit juice a lot of the time. So yeah, you know what, I'm just going to do this all in a oneer because the glass will take 443 mils quite easily. So there you are. Looks awesome, doesn't it? It really does. Is that nicely lined up? Yes, my OCD is happy. But yeah, and before the head on this one disappears then, you can see that the beer is poured with just under a finger of a frothy, kind of dark pinky coloured head there. I'll just let you guys have a little look at that before it kind of disappears actually. But you can see kind of medium size bubbles sitting on the top of the liquid, and you can see that there's so much fruit in this one that it's just leaving the, the sediment particles are kind of sticking toward the side, sticking on the side of the glass there, and that head is of course just fading away more and more. But yeah, the colour of this one is pretty much the same as the can. I'm not sure, I've seen a few beers actually with One Drop. I think they actually try and make their cans mimic the colour of the beer. I think that's something I'm starting to pick up on with these guys now, but I never really paid attention to before. But yeah, colour wise, I would describe this one as being a little bit similar to, the Heart of Midlothian football shirt, like that, the sort of maroon if you like. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a dark coloured beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. And when it comes to the kind of modern sour beers like that, it's the fruits and the adjuncts and things that are deciding the colour of these beers. So probably the colour on this one is most determined by the cherry, with a little bit of influence from the plum. I'm not sure if the orange is really going to have much of an effect on the colour of this one. But yeah, it's hazy as hell. That's going to be due to the presence of both the puree and the oats and wheat and things that they use in here to actually make these kind of smoothie sours. There'll be a lot of wheat in this one if they're basing the recipe on a Florida Weisse. I'm not sure how well that you guys can see that, but you can really see the sort of yogurty type particles floating around in this one. There's really not much in the way of visible carbonation, but yeah, if you kind of wiggle the glass around a wee bit, you can see little bits of sediment particles and things just floating around in this. It's a beautiful, beautiful looking beer. I do have to say that for it. It looks absolutely lovely, this one. That's things we've seen from One Drop Brewing before, but I do wonder if the sedimentation this is a little bit more, because I have had this beer maybe about 2 months, maybe 3 months, something like that. This is one that I've been wanting to try for a good wee while, but obviously been busy with life, as I've mentioned in the channel message recently. But yeah, colour wise and appearance wise, there's nothing particularly surprising about this one. And I'll say before we actually do the aroma and tasting of this beer that quite often these kind of fruited sour beers are quite simple and straightforward in terms of their flavour and aroma profiles, but if they're done right, they can be awesome beers, and One Drop Brewing really are one of the best in the world when it comes to these sort of things, in my opinion. But yeah, let's have a little look at this beer properly. Oh, the cherry is the backbone of this for sure. And one thing I will say is, until kind of recent-ishly, I was never the greatest fan of cherries. I never liked, even like cherry candy sweets and stuff, I was just never that into them. But recently, and I think it's probably due in part to these kind of smoothie sour beers, I've really kind of gotten into that and diversified my palate a wee bit more. So yeah, the aroma of this one is absolutely lovely. It's very straightforward. I mean, the cherry is the backbone of this beer. It's a very soft, almost kind of candied cherry that you get out of this one. But you can smell the juicier plum kind of sitting on top of that. The plum almost gives you this kind of like phenolic type quality to the beer. And then the orange, you can feel that in the kind of top front part of your nose. The orange is really, really, yeah, the orange really sits on top of everything. So the cherry is almost giving you the juicy kind of candied characters. The plum is sort of moderating everything. And then the orange, the blood orange in this one is really just sitting in the top and giving you that sharper note. As you would expect, the fruits kind of dominate the aroma in here. But if you take the aroma in a little bit more deeply, you can smell some other things. So there's a tiny little hint of there's like a tiny little hint of a fresh kind of white bready bread crust in this one. There's like a fresh white bready bread crust in there, a little bit of Jacob's cream cracker or something like this. There's a bit of white bread, but the backbone of the malty side of this beer is that typical kind of creamy yogurty sort of thing. It's the oats and the wheat that kind of combine to give you that big yogurty type character that this beer has. Absolutely. It smells awesome. really does. Yeah, the fruity notes that you get out of this one are just awesome. They're really, really good. Yeah, so there's that big sort of, you know, I always describe it as the kind of munch bunch, petit filou, fromage frais type yogurty character in this one. These beers remind me of the yogurts that my mum used to put in my my lunchbox when I was a wee boy. That's really what I'm getting out of this one. You can really smell that in there. There's a wee touch of, like, you know, Werther's original butter candy, butterscotch. There's a little bit of that to this, and a wee touch of biscuit as well, but it's really like a big yogurty type character that forms the malt base of this one. The yeasty character at the back of the nose is also very kind of yogurty, maybe like a sort of there's maybe a slightly kind of sponge cakey type note to the yeasty side of things as well. But yeah, I think that's absolutely fair to say with this one. It's really interesting in that regard. Yeah, I don't think we need to say anything more about the malty and yeasty side of things. The beer does have a little bit of a kind of bubblegummy type note to it as well, which is worth noting. So yeah, interesting stuff. So when it comes to the hoppy side of this beer, and this is one thing we need to mention with these modern sour beers, there's a bit of a dichotomy almost, because some brewers like to put hops in these beers to add that little bit more complexity, whereas you have other brewers who argue that, yeah, the fruited adjuncts just kind of cancel out the hops anyway. So yeah, a lot of them don't add hops into the beers, and I'm pretty sure that One Drop are one of the ones that don't add hops into their kind of smoothie and fruity sour beers. But yeah, even when it comes to the old Belgian lambics and things, they used to add old hops into them because they didn't want the kind of bitterness of the hops to take away from the sourness of the beer. So obviously the older the hops get, the more the alpha acid potency kind of drops away. But yeah, you still get a little bit of a kind of green component placebo with a lot of these beers, and that is a little bit noticeable with this one. I should say that actually. Yeah, so with this one, on the green component side of things, I think there is a little bit of yeah, I think there's a little bit of kind of green component. There's a wee touch of earthiness, there's a wee bit of woodiness. I'm getting little bits of kind of grassy note out of there, but yeah, the cherry, the blood orange and the blood plum, all of these things are just kind of, you know, engulfing everything. And yeah, they're just engulfing everything and sort of taking over, if you like. So yeah, that's very, very apparent in this particular beer, that's for sure. But yeah, so there is a bit of that green component pungency in there, but yeah, it's engulfed by everything else. I think I described the fruits a little bit earlier on in the aroma, so we don't need to go into that too much. But I would say, yeah, the more that I smell of this beer, the more I get the kind of phenolic notes out of it. There's a wee bit of like candied strawberry or something in there, but yeah, the cherry is the most dominant. The fig is kind of softening out and giving you a wee bit of that phenolic type quality, you know, that sort of Cavonia, cough syrupy type note. And then yeah, the orangey character sits on top of all of that. So yeah, a really interesting beer, this one, in terms of its aroma, but as I always say, take a little bit of time to just enjoy that before you get stuck into it. But I think we should try this one now. So yeah, this one is the Blood Moon, a 6.9% triple fruited sour with blood plum, blood orange and blood cherries from the wonderful One Drop Brewing Company in Botany, Sydney, New South Wales, down in Australia. Let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Oh yeah. That's good, but I will say, you know, the sediment in this one has obviously come out quite a wee bit. So it has got a little bit of that kind of pulpy, fruit juicy type character to it, and it's got a fair wee bit of sharpness in the beginning. This one, I mean, the other ones that I've had from One Drop in the past, they've been a little, you know, they've not really had this kind of pulpy sort of thing going on. But this one, again, it's been a wee while since I've had one of these beers. I think it was a few months ago. So, you know, the impact flavours are a little bit more to my palate, but this one is really damn good actually. quite different. I mean, the cherries really play the biggest, they're really quite dominant in this one, but the orange as well is giving the beer. You've got this kind of mix between citrusy zestiness, but also that sharper sour cherry underneath. A very quirky beer, and obviously the fact that it's meant to be a Florida Weisse and have that kind of like sharp character to it. I think usually with the Florida Weisses they use a slightly sour yeast and a bit of acidulated malt. You can really get that out of this one. So this beer does have quite a bit of impact flavour to it. Just be aware of that before you try it. So yeah, the way this one kind of, it's that kind of citrusy character really is lingering there, but the juiciness really starts to push itself out later on as well. Yeah, it takes a wee bit of time for your palate to adjust to this one, but once again, it's a beautiful, beautiful beer this. So a big thumbs up to the guys at One Drop for this. I think I have left this one in the fridge a wee bit too long, in honesty, but again, I do think it's also a little bit more kind of pulpy in terms of what's going on with it. But yeah, let's try and just break down the flavour of this one then and describe it for you that wee bit more in depth. We'll start on the middle third of the palate, as we always do. So, the back third of your palate, or the middle third of your palate, sorry, you can feel there's a little kind of hint of bread crusty character in there. And so there's a little hint of bread crusty character in there. There's a wee bit of woodiness further forward on that middle third of your palate. But that does linger into the aftertaste, and you get a wee bit of cracker, and then maybe above that there is a kind of bready note in there, and it's kind of a mix of like slightly sweet brown bread and slightly sweet white bread, but then yeah, above everything else it's all that kind of almost creamy, yogurty character that comes out of the beer, and that is of course your combination of wheat and oats in there. So that kind of yogurty layer, it really has that, pardon me, sort of petit filou, fromage frais type character to a, you know, Muller Corner yogurt that's got a little bit of that. So yeah, bread crust, wee touch of cracker, wood, white bread in the base, but then yeah, the sort of yogurty character from the wheat and the oats. Yeah, the yogurty character from the wheat and the oats have a lot of, you know, that really kind of dominates that middle of your palate for sure. But yeah, on top of everything else, you have the you can feel above that kind of oaty yogurty layer in the dead centre of your palate, there's a little circle there, and that's where you get this kind of like Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotch type flavour. That is of course the boozy side of the beer. This one's 6.9%, so it's a little bit heavier. There are quite a few of the ones we've had from these guys in the past have been sort of, I'm sure most of them have been about 6% in honesty. But yeah, in the dead centre of your palate, you do get a little bit of that Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotch, and that is the alcohol of the beer coming out. There's going to be a tiny little hint of McVitie's digestive biscuit surrounding the rest of it, but I think that is everything we really need to say about the middle third of your palate in this beer. So let's go to the back third of the palate then. As I've often said, generally sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. But yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get that little bit of kind of bready build up in there. You have the you've got a little bit of an almost brown bready character in the base, then the white bread on top, and then you can feel the more oaty, wheaty kind of characters sitting on top of that. But yeah, the base of that back third of your palate, you've got the bread crust again, the cracker, brown bready layers there. There's a white bready layer as well. It felt like it was more mixed in the middle third of your palate, of course, but there's definitely sort of distinctive layers there, and then the kind of yogurty character kind of creeps over the top of that. But on the back third of your palate, the yogurty side of things, it shows a little bit of dryness from the oats, and then everything else above that is to do with the yeast in this beer. So let's have a wee look at the yeasty characters that this beer shows. So, yeah, the yeasty side of this beer, for me, at its core, it's got a little bit of a kind of almost sponge cakey type quality, like a mix of marzipan and vanilla type sponge cake. As you move out from that, it's got a little bit more of a kind of white bready sort of note, and then the very edge of the very edge of that actually is kind of more along the lines of a kind of like cake crust or something. So yeah, definitely the back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it kind of condenses together and squashes down that little bit more. But I think that covers the malty and yeasty side of this beer. So yeah, I get more and more kind of sponge cakey and almost slightly marzipan-y notes out of this beer into the aftertaste, which is quite interesting for sure. So yeah, in terms of the kind of hoppy side of things then, pardon me, the green component of this beer, like I said earlier, there is a little bit of green component there, but it's basically been kind of suppressed, if you like, by the fruity adjuncts into the beer. So for me, back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness in there, a little bit of woodiness as you come further forward, and you can feel a little bit of like placebo floral aromaticity coming out of this one going further forward. But around the front curve of the tongue, it's a little bit lighter and more grassy, if you like. And I actually am wondering if there's a wee bit of hop being added into this one. I don't know if the Floridian breweries that do the Florida Weisse actually add a bit of hop into their beers, but with this one, the green component feels a little bit more prominent than it would where there not to be hops added into the beer. So that's kind of interesting for sure. But yeah, I'd love to see the recipe sheet for this one and just see exactly what they've done. But yeah, I think with this one there must be a little bit of hop in that, in honesty. But again, I could be wrong. So let's have a little look at the front third of your palate then and the fruity side of the beer. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate. Again, you get that little bit of bready build up in there. There's a wee bit of brown bready note in there, although on this one it actually feels as if it's a mix of white bread and brown bread, and then you've got the more yogurty thing sitting above that. So yeah, that is quite interesting. But yeah, the base of that front 30 palate, you've got the bread crust, the cracker, the mix of bread, and then the kind of yogurty type thing, and then above that you've got all the fruity adjunct coming out of the beer. So let's have a wee look at how that kind of goes together. So yeah, I think with this one, it's kind of, as I would have expected it, I think the cherry is kind of forming the base above the front third of your palate. So the cherry's forming the base, and the plum is coming in and sitting above that and sort of mellowing it out a wee bit, and then the orange sits on top and just gives you that wee bit of like zestiness into the aftertaste. You have of course got wee hints of like pear and candied strawberry, and there's a wee bit of that phenolic type flavour coming out of this one as well that I talked about earlier. But yeah, you can pick out each of the fruits. I think the cherry and the blood cherry and the blood orange are the most prominent of the flavours, but the fig, what was it, am I saying it? The plum, sorry, I'm saying figs. The plum is really kind of finding a good border between the two and just mellowing both of them out so that the beer is not too overpowering. So it's quite an interesting point to make about that, and I had no idea either that there was such a thing as a blood plum. So you know, you learn something new every day. But yeah, I think they've done a good job of this, and it's certainly different to what I've had from One Drop Brewing in the past. The Florida Weisse thing with this one, it shows its head a wee bit into the aftertaste. You can feel a little bit of that kind of acidulated malt type thing further back on your palate, of course. And of course the wee bit hoppy character that I was talking about too. So yeah, this beer, it's a bit distinctive from what we've had from One Drop Brewing previously, which, you know, that's mostly been kind of smoothie sours and imperial smoothie sours and stuff like that, actually. So yeah, this beer does distinguish itself a little bit from those, and of course the fruits are different too. But it just goes to show you how good these guys are when it comes to these fruited sour type beers, actually. So again, big thumbs up to them. Let's round off this review then with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel. For me, this one, yeah, I mean, it is pretty full-bodied. It feels a little bit lighter than some of the other ones I've had from One Drop, I think, just because of that slight hoppiness and the kind of acidulated malt character. That's obviously because it's a Florida Weisse, actually, so you do have a wee bit of that in there. I think, so yeah, probably bottom end of full-bodied for me. The carbonation is very, very smooth. It's got an almost kind of silky mouthfeel to it. Your IBU count in this one, I think, is going to be about 10 or 15 or something at the absolute most, if any. But yeah, your malty character, there's a wee bit of dryness underneath, smoothness in the middle, and a kind of creaminess and drier sweetness on top. And then yeah, you've got a lovely fruitiness to this one. It has got a wee bit of impact to it, so say the cherries give you a wee bit of sharpness in the beginning, and the kind of citrusy orange, the blood orange, of course, gives you that kind of sharpness into the aftertaste too. But a really, really interesting beer, this one, and I'm certainly glad that I got to try it. So yeah, I think we can leave it there. This one was the Blood Moon, a 6.9% fruity sour with blood plum, blood orange, and blood cherry from the wonderful One Drop Brewing in Botany, Sydney, New South Wales, down in Australia. So yeah, thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from One Drop Brewing as well. Check out my friend Sam Smalley as well at Short and Stout Beer Reviews, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very future, and you'll see more Australian beers as well. Slàinte, skål, and cheers. Ciao just now.